Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on social media and mental health. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. On one hand, social media enables us to connect with people, promote brands and activities, create businesses, and support causes. But on the other, it can be a harmful tool for negativity, including cyberbullying, shaming, scams, and threats. Now there are growing concerns about its impact on mental health, especially for teens. It's everywhere. We all use it, and it's hard to imagine what our lives would be like without it. But do we really know about the true impact of social media use and abuse? Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy issued an advisory warning of a teen mental health crisis, saying there is growing evidence that social media use is associated with harm to young people's mental health.
Even though there are some very positive parts of social media, there can be some negative things too. So we are seeing some studies looking at the fact that there has been increased anxiety, depression, and even some suicidal ideations or even suicide because of social media.
Simone Nicole is a content creator who gained huge viral popularity with her videos showing Black women how to care for their hair and wear it beautifully natural. She is passionate about redefining beauty to include girls and women who look like her, but says it wasn't always easy. She says learning to deal with harsh or hateful feedback helped her to grow and learn to focus on her own goals.
I can experience some downfalls, but I mean, even thinking about that, negative comments are negative comments. Like the good that's come from our platforms has been, I mean, the joy of my life thus far. The people that have told me I've helped to change their lives for the better, that I've helped them with their self-esteem, with their growth, with their journey. I mean, like smiling ear to ear, like it's priceless.
Social media companies are increasingly coming under fire for harming users' mental health. There's a growing number of private lawsuits where alleged victims are suing for damages. Mayor Eric Adams has called social media a public health hazard. He made headlines with a lawsuit against a handful of the biggest social media companies for allegedly designing their platforms to exploit teen users' mental health. The lawsuit claimed that it cost the city $100 million for mental health services to help the young people adversely affected.
It's an emerging legal landscape. There are creative lawsuits. There is proposed legislation. There are congressional hearings. And so what we're really seeing is society feeling out how best to regulate this new animal of social media.
Let's take it to our panel and find out what they have to say.
Joining me is Eric Faddis. He's a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Eric, great to have you with us on the show.
Stoked to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also joining us is Simone Nicole. She's a content creator as well as an actor. Simone, great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Thank you. Also joining us, Dr. Jeff Gardier, clinical psychologist. We call him America's psychologist. Dr. Jeff, great to have you with us.
It's great to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Jeff, I want to start with you about this because obviously mental health is in the focus of the topic. What is mental health?
There are a lot of definitions for mental health, but the one that I like is when we look at mental health as being emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It really does affect the way that we think, that we feel, that we act, and it helps us determine how we handle stress, how we handle interpersonal relationships, how we make healthy choices. What I really like about this idea of talking about mental health and not necessarily mental illness all the time is mental health, like any health, is something that we need to work on. We need to make it stronger. We shouldn't take it for granted. And that's what I see in today's generation, that mental health is something that people are getting life coaching for, therapy for, really promoting it and being proactive about their mental health and not reactive when it comes to mental illness.
Simone, as a content creator, and you really have had an organic experience over the last like 8-9 years on social media, as you've grown up too, tell us, do you think that it's more beneficial or do you think things have gone too far?
I think that it's a mix of both. It just depends on how you interact with social media. So algorithms are only what we teach them to be. So if you interact with things that will build your mental health with things that are positive, with things that push you in the right direction of your life, your goals, it's a great tool. Now, where we start to go down the rabbit hole is when we start to interact with things that don't push us that way. So I think it's a blessing and it's a curse because I laugh a lot while I'm logged on to my socials. Like I have a good old time. Like I follow the girls, they do makeup, hair, fashion. I don't know, and people tell jokes. That's what my algorithm looks like. Now, for other people, I could understand why you might struggle being online and absorbing the things that you're absorbing on a daily basis.
And what you're talking about when you talk about the algorithm too is like once you start liking certain things or viewing certain things, you get more of those suggestions. Those are at the top of your feed that come right into your
Yeah. You don't even have to like things either. You can just like watch it. Like your watch time matters a lot to algorithms as well.
Exactly. Eric, as an attorney, why are we seeing more of these lawsuits and then including this gigantic one from New York City against all the social media companies?
Yeah, Lisa, I mean, this is really an emerging legal landscape, and it looks kind of like the Wild West currently. There's not a ton of certainty. It's not a ton. There's not a lot of black and white on the legal side when it comes to social media. And so kind of what we're seeing now is people are recognizing both the benefits, but also the harms and deciding what to do about the harms. And so that sometimes takes the form of lawsuits. It sometimes takes the form of proposed legislation. There's one pending in Tennessee. Florida just made a measure recently regarding social media. And so I think we're kind of just, as a society, trying to find out, how do we manage this? How do we distill and utilize the benefits while trying to protect people, including the most vulnerable, from the harms of it? And that's why we're seeing sort of these creative legal avenues that are being presented.
So we're really seeing this is really pioneering type of legal work because we've never been in this place before.
Oh, absolutely. And when you look at some of these cases and how the courts are analyzing them, they don't have a ton of prior precedent on which to rely because it's just kind of a new thing. So, you know, they take analogies from, you know, cases involving literature and cases involving mail and stuff like that, and phones and stuff like that. But it really is sort of its own animal, and we have yet really to tame it on the legal side.
Lisa, I would say that, you know, what I'm hearing from both of our guests is something that Curtis Mayfield, the late, great Curtis Mayfield, called future shock. We are, this technology has run away from us. We are not used to it. We're trying to catch up with it, what the rules and regulations may be. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the conflicts, the lawsuits, the legislation, and what's happening with our children here.
Stay with us, there's more to come.
Simone, you have a video on your YouTube page talking about the effect of negative comments. How did you learn how to deal with that?
It's been a journey. I don't know if there is going to be an end to it because we've seen people that have been in the social guise for 15 years still struggle to get past the things that people say with them or say about them, and how to live with it. Because unfortunately, we've developed this sense that negative comments and criticism is just a part of the job, whether it be content creators or whether it be traditional celebrities. It doesn't really matter. I think that we as a society have decided that, like, if you are public facing, you are fair game. I'm learning tools as to how to reconcile with it. It isn't as simple as like a shake it off kind of thing. A lot of comments do roll off my back, but kind of what you mentioned, like the projection of it all. And sometimes people hitting things right, like nail on the head with things that I actually struggle with. Those are the things that
like they know where to push the button, right? Like
yeah. It's definitely a process of building thicker skin. And honestly, the journey of figuring out who I am outside of social media and building a strong base for my own self-esteem and my own confidence outside of socials, because there is good and bad. I mean, if I let the positive comments even build my self-esteem, there's a big fallout to that because tides turn online all the time. So if I build my self-esteem off of all the positive comments even, that's not a reliable ground to stand on.
Dr. Jeff, what about the effect of negative comments? Are we drawn to that? I mean, what is that?
I would say that, for the regular folks who are not social commentators, who are not personalities on the internet, regular folks who may have pre-existing mental health issues, or who may be very, very young and are forming their self-esteem and who they are as a person. These things can be very, very destructive because the trolls seem to know exactly, as you're saying, Lisa, what buttons to push, how to be mean. We've seen situations where people are bullied online, where it's led to severe mental health issues, where it's even led to suicide. So it is very, very important that we try to regulate those individuals, make sure that there are rules of conduct that need to be followed, and that there is civility in the comments that come online.
Eric, in terms of the lawsuits that you've seen around the country, are people claiming that they were harmed in some way by it?
There are really kind of two separate bases that certain claimants have proceeded through. And so one of them is sort of saying, hey, there's content on your platform that caused me harm. Maybe there are many cases, or at least several cases, where YouTube and other platforms hosted ISIS and hosted terrorist organizations and were arguably promoting them, according to the plaintiffs. And then there was a terrorist incident and someone died, and the plaintiff's family sued the platform by saying, hey, your content, what you have on there is a problem. That's one sort of route people have taken. The other route is to attack the platform directly. So not the content that its users provide, but really the actions from a higher level, a systemic level of these platforms, and what they have done, according to New York, to target young folks and knowing that this stuff is harmful. And so those are really the two avenues that litigation has taken.
Simone, some of the studies that I saw, they say women are more susceptible to these comments than men, and girls are more susceptible. What do you think about that?
I think that it speaks to the overall state that our society kind of is in. I can only speak from my experience as a woman. I know that men have their own journeys. It's very difficult for women to just exist in general. Now, put a microscope on you, put hundreds of thousands of followers on you. I think that we as a society are very, very, very comfortable critiquing everything about women, from our choices to have children, our choices to partner or not, our weight, our looks, our hair, our teeth, how much makeup we choose to wear or not wear. Everything is up for debate.
Can you share with us like some of the hurtful things that people have said to you that really wounded you, that you had to get past?
Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions about how much I love myself or care about myself based on the things that I decide to do for myself. So specifically as a Black woman, the second I decide to wear weave, it's called into question whether or not I am comfortable with the skin that I'm in, specifically my natural hair, which is something that Black women struggled with for years. Like, having the courage to wear our natural hair. We literally had to just implement protections for Black women to wear their natural hair in the workplace without discrimination. And that's not even a nationwide policy. It's only in certain states. So I had to fight for that love for myself and that level of comfort to actually be proud to wear my hair. So it feels like you're picking at a real wound that is not just there for me, but for a lot of Black women. When I decide to, God forbid, put a little wig on my head, and now we're talking about my allegiance to my Blackness. It's just,
so they're basically saying you had no right to comment on that. You had no right to comment on your own experience.
No right to comment on my own experience, and calling into question just like my love for myself. And how did we get here? How did me putting some weave in my head take me from just wanting to switch up my look, something that Black women have done since the dawn of history, and calling into question my love for myself? You got to look at what's underneath that and what people are trying to say about me and fellow Black women. It's very harmful, and it's hurtful at the base of it.
No,
I would have to tell you there, what we're seeing here and, what you've been through, the comments that you're getting, a lot of that is a microcosm in some ways, as big as the net is, right, to infinity and beyond. It's a microcosm as to what's going on in the world, but specifically what is going on in our country. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of racism. I believe, and I'll say this as a psychologist, these people hate themselves. They hate themselves.
Man.
So there's a platform for them to project that hate onto someone else so they can feel better instead of getting treatment, instead of talking to someone. In this case, everyone is a victim. And that's why it's so important that we put safeguards in to the internet. And it's going to take years as far as legislation, as far as rules, as far as, you know, people getting sued to be able to rein in this thing, but it's going to be so hard.
To follow up on those things, you know, I'm a white dude, and my profile isn't super expansive, and I've got a business on there. And when someone says something bad about my business, or, you know, someone commented on my calves one time and it upset me, you know, it's hard enough for me to do it, but let alone these folks who have to deal with so much more. No one ever questions my allegiance to my whiteness or to my Italianness. So that's just one less thing that I have to deal with. And so when we're talking about, you know, how social media is affecting folks, I think it's important to understand the different, the sort of disparate impacts on different types of groups that can make it even harder, even more challenging. And then when you add the youth component, there's really a recipe for harm.
Dr. Jeff, what about with kids? Because you know too, you're a father of 6. You have, you know, it's so easy. Get the iPad, get the tablet, give it to the kid. There's kids on them as young as like 2 years old, and growing up with it at such a young age that's a pivotal part of their experience. What do you think of that?
You know, the self-gratification that they get from these devices has changed the neurotransmitters. It's changed the way that children are wired. It's made them smarter. It's made them more, at times, more focused, but it's also made them also less focused. They need that gratification even quicker. They need the dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter that says, do that again. We're not looking at the classic sense of the word of addiction as in, you know, a clinical addiction, but I believe there are addictive behaviors for our children.
But Eric, are we looking at social media the right way legally? Because we talk about kids, and you know, there's a minimum driving age, there's a minimum drinking age, there's minimum ages for different things. There's a concept, isn't there, in the law of protecting juveniles? What about that?
It reminds me of, I'm trying to find this quote from Mayor Adams. New York City is the first major American city to take combined steps of this magnitude to address and regulate essentially how they regulated tobacco and guns. You know, I think there's this prevailing consensus that there are harms associated with using this service, and that the youth are particularly vulnerable and perhaps particularly targeted. And so, you know, what steps should the government take to intervene and protect those folks while still trying to maintain sort of the freedom of information that flows from these social media sites?
Do you feel that everything is very intentional about what they're doing to attract kids?
I was reading the complaint, which is bringing this lawsuit against TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And in that complaint, they really detail, at least according to New York, how these social media companies seek out the youths. You know, because if you get them young, then they are going to be hooked on this platform for years, generations potentially. And so at least what it appears, according to New York, is that social media is targeting the most vulnerable in our communities. And so New York has sort of taken a rather creative legal step here in filing this lawsuit.
Simone, what would you say to girls that get targeted?
I try to use my platform a lot to talk about how to build yourself up and how to make sure that your self-esteem is not something that you build on other people's opinions, other people's thoughts, because those are ever shifting. The beauty standard for not just Black women, but women in general has shifted realistically 10 years. We have a new standard of what it means to be beautiful. And if we're being completely honest, Black people and Black women are usually not included in that. I want to cultivate an audience and a group of women that build it on something that is unshakable, that cannot be changed. Because when you do that, you have complete autonomy, and no matter what the world is telling you, you know who you are. So I think that working on your self-esteem is imperative to actually living a healthy and happy life.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on social media and mental health. You can watch it again and share it on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page. Remember, use your mind, it's your best weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.